Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of the tutorial on the printing stars pattern for the JavaScript coding challenges. So in our previous tutorial, what we did was we just went through how to print this pattern right here, and we did it pretty quickly. We just had a nested for loop and we went through it. However, now we're given the task to print a different type of pattern. In this case, it is pretty similar to the pattern we printed, just with one difference, and that is the patterns are flipped. So in this case, we're incrementing by 1 in terms of printing stars based on the rows as the rows progress. However, in this pattern, we start off with 5 stars and we're decrementing the number of stars based on the rows as we progress lower and lower. So the idea is the same, and that idea is we need to utilize nested for loops, right? We need to use nested for loops to our advantage, right? And what we're going to have to do is, it's just a basic syntax for nested for loops. So we're going to start off with defining our variable or counter variable. And I'll just like to explain to you guys why we're deciding to use a different type of counter variable instead of 0 in this case. So in our previous coding challenge, we started with 0 because we used I as a way to count how many stars will be printed on each row. But the problem is that in this example right here, we cannot use I as 0 because our first row does not have like 1 star. It starts up with 5 stars and then it decreases, right? Decrements, right? So we can't start with 0 exactly. So what we're going to do instead is 5. And you guys will see why we're using 5 very, very soon. And in order to complete our for loop, we want 5 iterations, right? So I'm just going to build a for loop for 5 iterations. And in order to make it not a infinite loop, we'll just have to do that. So we're saying, okay, start at 5 and go all the way up until 0. There we go. We're saying, start at 5 and go all the way up until, I is greater than 0, right? Whoops. When I is greater than 0. So that's perfectly fine. And so what's going to happen is it's going to go from I of 5 to I of 1, right? And that is 5 iterations. So perfect, that works. Now we're going to have a nested for loop, okay? And in this nested for loop, what we're going to do is something very similar to what we did above in our part 1 of this question. And we're just going to go ahead and copy and paste this code, and I'll explain why we might have to modify it a bit in order for it to work, or what kind of output we really expect right now. Okay, so I'm just going to run through the very first iteration of this function, right? Or these for loops. So let's say when I is 5, so our very first row, we're saying, okay, we're going to set j is equal to 0, and we're saying, is 0 less than or equal to 5? It is. So we're going to have 1 iteration right there. Then I is going to turn into 1. And we're saying, okay, is 1 less than or equal to 5? And it is. And then we're going to do the same thing for 2, 3, 4. And since we have an equal sign, we say, okay, it's going to go 4 plus 1 is 5, right? So we're saying is 5 less than or equal to 5? And it is. So we're just 6 iterations. And that seems to be a problem because we're not printing 6 stars, right? We're only printing 5. So instead of having this equal sign, what we should do is just have a less than sign, okay? And what we should expect is this pattern to come out perfect. And I'm just going to run through code and hopefully with all fingers crossed that this function works. And it does. We get our desired output. And yeah, so that really completes the tutorial. I hope that was pretty quick and easy to follow through, and give it a shot.